Welcome back. Now let's talk about the weather. Drone footage from today is showing the destructive impact of flooding in India's capital and northern states following record rainfall since the start of the monsoon season that swelled major rivers in the region. Several areas of New Delhi remain inundated after water from the Yamuna River, which runs through the city, flowed in through a broken drain regulator as waterlogged roads disrupted commuters and caused extensive traffic. Damaged roads, rivers and temples were also seen across India's northern state of Himachal Pradesh as residents struggled to recover since the incessant rains had caused flash floods from the swollen Beej River, killing at least 88 people. Over in China, floods wreaked havoc in Qingchong as cars and trucks were partially submerged after flood water gushed down a retaining wall. China state broadcaster also showed videos of floods from the same area at Chongqing. The authorities there have issued red alerts and posted a statement on its social media platform saying that there is widespread heavy rain to torrential rain in Guangzhou, with some towns experiencing severe rain. Well, as Asians are battling with floods and rains, a heat wave continues to sweep across parts of Europe with potential record-breaking temperatures in the next few days. Temperatures are expected to surpass 40 degrees Celsius in parts of Spain, France, Greece, Croatia and Turkey. The European Space Agency says they could reach 48 degrees Celsius in parts of Italy, becoming potentially the hottest temperatures ever recorded on the continent. A red alert warning is in place for 10 cities, including Florence and Rome. Last month was the hottest June on record, according to the EU's climate monitoring service, Copernicus. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, has warned that extreme weather resulting from warming climates is unfortunately becoming the new normal.
They were nauseous, they are dizzy, they don't feel well, they want somewhere to sit, and they have to immediately to take them out of sun, immediately.
I did think twice, but I've always wanted to see the Acropolis. I mean, this is one of my dreams. So I was like, I'll try it. If it gets too bad, I'll just get an Uber and go back to the hotel.
Well, I'm from Canada, so I'm used to cold, so I don't mind the heat at all.
These temperatures are very high. It does cause danger to life, so we're very worried that a number of people will die in this heat wave. When we saw the heat wave last summer in 2022, it's estimated that over 60,000 people died in that heat wave across Europe. Heat is a silent killer.
Well, staying in the EU, the European Union has passed landmark legislation to fight climate change. The Nature Restoration Law, which passed through Parliament by a laser-thin majority, commits member states to taking decisive action to restore habitats and ecosystems by 2030. Among those opposing the law, which is part of the EU's ambitious Green Deal, are large-scale farmers who say they'll face a major drop in income as a result. The law will be one of the EU's biggest pieces of green legislation, requiring countries to introduce measures restoring nature on a fifth of their land by 2030.
Can I give the floor back to the rapporteur?
This law is nothing less than the flagship initiative of the European Green Deal, nature and biodiversity pillar, and it's intrinsically linked to its climate pillar. It's the first EU legal proposal on nature since 30 years. It is the EU's climate law for biodiversity, and the success of one depends on the success on the other.
Dear colleagues, our rivers are dying, our forests are sick, our nature is in deep crisis. We have to restore our nature. Not in a distant future, not when EPP has gotten their act together. We have to act now.
Kate Ferguson, correspondent from Deutsche Welle, joins me now for more from Berlin. Hi, Kate. What are the main tenets of this law?
Well, this law is basically about reversing decades of environmental damage. The EU estimates that about 80% of natural habitats are in poor condition. Now, this is a really big deal because these natural habitats, they host the ecosystems that are completely essential to our daily survival. They produce the water we drink, the food we eat, the raw materials that are used in the manufacturing and the construction industries. And this law is really groundbreaking because it actually mandates member member states to reverse this environmental damage. And you might be asking yourself, well, how will this actually look in concrete terms? Well, in some cases, it's quite straightforward. It's about simply exploiting nature less, so cutting down fewer trees or fishing less. And these actions in themselves are significant because the oceans and the forest capture carbon, which limits climate change. In other cases, though, more proactive measures are needed, and that could be things like cleaning the soil, removing pesticides, or restoring peatland from agricultural use. All in all, the EU wants to restore all of its natural habitats to a good condition by the year 2050. And as you can imagine, that is a huge undertaking. It'll be difficult to monitor, but it will certainly affect all different sectors of the economy.
Okay, why are farmers so upset about it?
Well, farmers are upset about this because, as I just mentioned, there are plans to restore peatland from agricultural use. So peatland is wetland that was formed over many thousands of years, and it's a really effective way of capturing carbon. And for that reason, the EU wants to preserve peatland, and it wants to take some of it away from agricultural use, which damages it. Now, for farmers, of course, that means less room to grow crops, hence less productivity and less income. And they say this is a terrible idea, especially at a time when food insecurity is a growing problem. That's due to the war in Ukraine and also due to soaring inflation. So they say, why now? Why limit the amount of food that we can grow? Proponents would counter that by saying, well, actually, food security requires action on climate change, because if we make crops more resistant to drought and to flooding, well, that is good for society in the long run. So it's really a balancing act between preserving the livelihoods of farmers today and protecting the future of the planet. And you can imagine that if your farmer is simply worried about supporting your family, these arguments can seem really abstract.
Indeed, Kate. Finally, before we let you go, in Germany, we understand there have been more protests from climate activists, who've been gluing themselves to airport runways. Bring us up to speed on if that's still happening, what's going on.
Sure. Well, I should say at the beginning that these actions have nothing to do with the Nature Restoration Act. They simply happen to coincide with it. And many prominent environmental activists, including Greta Thunberg, were actually outside the parliament in Strasbourg demonstrating in favour of this law passing. So there's actually been a broad welcome of the law. But in a separate development, this group called Letzte Generation, or Last Generation, yes, they have been gluing themselves to the airport runways at Hamburg and Düsseldorf, causing a huge amount of travel disruption, as you would expect. And these kinds of actions have become pretty commonplace, you have to say, in Germany. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was on my way to work and I encountered two young people glued to the road. And no matter how you feel about them, because there is a lot of public debate here about how authorities should respond to these groups, they certainly are getting their message across, which is that urgent action is needed to tackle climate change. Here in Europe at the moment, we are seeing a really significant heat wave, particularly in the southern European countries. We're seeing record-breaking temperatures. And that, of course, is extremely dangerous. According to one recent study, 60,000 people died in Europe last year as a result of heat waves. And these climate activists are simply saying no action we are taking is crucial and dramatic enough to combat the effects of climate change. And this law we're discussing, the Nature Restoration Act, certainly is one significant step, many activists would say, in the right direction towards combating this existential issue.
Kate, many thanks. Kate Ferguson there from our correspondent, Deutsche Welle. Thanks for joining us. We'll move on to the US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, who we understand is Indonesia, attending the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, post-ministerial conference in Jakarta. He says Myanmar's military regime must be pushed to stop violence and implement a peace plan it agreed with its Southeast Asian neighbors 2 years ago. On the sidelines of the conference, Mr. Blinken also held bilateral meetings with his Indonesian counterpart, Retno Marsudi, as well as China's China's top diplomat Wang Yi. The gathering of ASEAN nations comes as patience wears thin among its 10 members over Myanmar's military ruler's refusal to halt hostilities and start inclusive dialogue as agreed to by its top general in April 2021. ASEAN has barred the junta from its summits for failing to implement the 5 points consensus, the only diplomatic process in play for achieving peace in Myanmar, where the UN estimates 1.5 million people have been displaced.
In Myanmar, we must press the military regime to stop the violence, to implement ASEAN's 5-point consensus, to support a return to democratic governance. Just yesterday, the United States announced over $74 million in additional humanitarian relief to the region, including nearly $61 million to support Rohingya displaced by the ongoing violence in Myanmar.
We believe that the U.S. will continue to support ASEAN centrality and reinforce ASEAN position as epicentrum of growth.
It's not what you hear every day. Although North Korea's missile testing makes major headlines, the world rarely hears from the government. However, that changed when the country's UN envoy told the UN Security Council its reason for its latest weapons launch. During a rare appearance, North Korea's UN ambassador Kim Song told the council that its launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile was an exercise of its right to self-defense, to deter dangerous military moves of hostile forces and safeguard the security of the state. The 15-member Security Council met after North Korea said it tested on Wednesday, July the 12th, its latest Hwasong-18 ICBM, adding the weapon is the core of its nuclear strike force. Diplomats say the last time North Korea spoke at a council meeting on its nuclear and ballistic missile programs was in December 2017.
Our test fire of a new type of ICBM has no negative effect on the security of a neighboring country. Japan announced that our ICBM landed outside its exclusive economic zone, and it is tantamount to Japan's acknowledgement there is no risk was posed to its security. Our test fire of a new type of ICBM, Hwasong-18, is a warranted exercise of the right to self-defense, to deter dangerous military moves of hostile forces, and safeguard security of our state and peace in the region without fail. We categorically reject and condemn the convening of the Security Council briefing by United States and its follower, which infringe upon DPRK's legitimate right to self-defense, since it constitutes illegal and reckless act of violating spirit of UN Charter and international law. Military provocation of the United States as a follower against the DPRK are growing as never before, and consequently, military security pattern in Korean Peninsula is reaching the phase of a nuclear crisis beyond Cold War era.
The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the DPRK's July 12 intercontinental ballistic missile launch. It is alarming, albeit hardly surprising, that we find ourselves back in the Council responding to yet another unlawful DPRK intercontinental ballistic missile launch. This launch follows a series of threatening statements from the DPRK, including the most recent ones from Pyongyang against U.S. aircraft operating in international airspace. But as I said before, this is unfortunately unsurprising. Russia and China have prevented this council from speaking with one voice. And with these repeated launches, Pyongyang is demonstrating it feels emboldened. The DPRK dismisses this council, threatens its neighbors, and refuses humanitarian assistance offered to its people. These are not the actions of a responsible member state. And the United States will not allow the DPRK and its defenders to make a mockery of this council.
Elsewhere, it's unprecedented, but it is happening. Major films in production, including the Avatar and Gladiator sequels, they're looking likely to be affected by Hollywood actors taking strike action. Promotional events such as red carpet premieres will also be affected, such as Disney film Haunted Mansion, released later this month. Events including the Emmys, Comic-Con may be rescheduled or scaled back. In the industry's biggest shutdown for over 60 years, some 160,000 performers stopped working at midnight in LA. The announcement followed similar strike action from the Writers Guild of America and brought most U.S. film and TV productions to a halt.
I think probably for actors, I'm guessing September. Writers, I know that there seems to be such animosity from producers toward the writers that I think it's gonna go longer. They're gonna offer us something and keep prolonging it, and I'll keep coming out.
You know, the whole thing is just, it's a scary place we're in because it is very easy to transition to not having humans do this. And that's why this is like, I just feel like the talk about AI has totally dropped the ball. I feel like no one said anything the same way no one talks about how the passing lane is on the left lane. I don't know how traffic is so bad now that everyone drives on the right lane. It's like the whole world has completely reversed itself just because people are so into their own ways.
As long as it's take, like, if it goes on for months, we need to strike for months. Like, we should not stop until we give everybody gets what they need. 100%.
Still to come on the program. Swiss artist uses mountain slopes as his canvas. Talk about art on high. You don't want to miss this. Please join us again. Welcome back. India has launched its third moon mission, aiming to be the first to land near its little explored South Pole. The Chandrayaan-3 spacecraft with an orbiter, lander and a rover lifted off at 14:35 Friday from Sriharikota Space Center. The lander is due to reach the moon on the 23rd to 24th of August. If successful, India will be only the fourth country to achieve a soft landing on the moon after the US, the former Soviet Union, and China. Thousands of people watched the launch from the viewers' gallery, and commentators described the sight of the rocket soaring in the sky as majestic. The liftoff was greeted with cheers and loud applause from the crowds and the scientists. To health matters now. Two groups linked to the World Health Organization, WHO, says the sweetener aspartame is a possible carcinogen, but it remains safe to consume at already agreed levels. The rulings are the outcome of two separate WHO expert panels, one of which flags whether there is any evidence that a substance is a potential hazard, and the other which assesses how much of a real-life risk that substance actually possesses. Dr. Thomas Gallagher, principal scientist for food additives and supplements of the US-based Center for Science and the Public Interest, says while it's important that consumers avoid aspartame, they should not replace it with sugar. In the decisions announced today, the International Agency for Research on Cancer said that aspartame was a possible carcinogen. Its first declaration on the additive. The classification means there is limited evidence that the substance can cause cancer. It does not take into account how much a person consumes. Aspartame is one of the world's most popular sweeteners used in products from Coca-Cola diet sodas to Mars Wrigley's extra chewing gum.
CSPI, that's my organization, has long recommended that consumers avoid aspartame because of concerns about cancer. So now IARC, a respected international authority on cancer, is echoing those concerns, classifying this very widely used sweetener as possibly carcinogenic. And this is really important, and consumers should take notice, and as should the food and beverage industry, and as should regulators. They should take notice and take action. While it's important that consumers avoid aspartame, they should not replace it with sugar. When it comes to beverages, which are by and large the major source of aspartame in the US, water really is your best beverage choice. Unsweetened beverages like coffee and tea can also be good options, but really water is your best choice. So if you currently drink diet soda, switch to water or unsweetened drinks, or Worst comes to worst, drink sweetened with stevia if you want something that has a sweet taste. That's a safer alternative to aspartame, in our opinion. The IARC expert working group performed a thorough, comprehensive review of the scientific literature. They look at all of the publicly available data that is, again, out in the public. And they did this and determined that aspartame could possibly cause cancer in humans. So that clearly shows that there's a real reason for concern when it comes to aspartame's ability to cause cancer in humans. CSPI has nominated aspartame to be evaluated by IARC on a couple of occasions, most recently in 2019. And that's because IARC is really the authority on these matters. They are the experts. They really specialize in cancer. And so we knew that IARC could provide much needed clarity on the link between aspartame and cancer using their scientifically rigorous, comprehensive, transparent, and systematic approach to evaluating the evidence. And that's exactly what they've done. And we are really appreciative to IARC for their decision to evaluate and then provide that clarity.
Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi has ended his tour of Africa in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare, where he was welcomed at the airport by Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Zimbabwe marks the final destination on Raisi's three-nation tour following his official visits to Kenya and Uganda. Zimbabwe and Iran signed 12 memorandums of understanding to strengthen bilateral ties. The 12 MOUs include plans to create a tractor manufacturing plant in Zimbabwe with an Iranian company and a local partner. The two countries also signed cooperation agreements for energy, agriculture, pharmaceuticals and telecommunications, as well as research, science and technology projects. Meanwhile, in a bid to motivate Zimbabwean youths to come out en masse to vote in the upcoming general elections, former world champion boxer Floyd Mayweather attended a political campaign event in the capital. Zimbabwean President Mnangagwa says he vows to do what he can to remain in power, promising to revive an economy that has collapsed under his watch as he launched his bid for a second five-year term in June. Floyd Mayweather was treated to a nice welcome by youths and locals. Take a look.
Former world boxing champion Floyd Mayweather attended a political campaign event in Zimbabwe as part of the ruling party's attempt to woo youth voters ahead of a general election next month. Mayweather was welcomed with song and dance by the ruling ZANU-PF party supporters in Mabuku, one of Zimbabwe's oldest townships on the outskirts of the capital, Harare.
I'm happy to see Mayweather here in Zimbabwe. It's the first time to come here in Zimbabwe to show people what he's able to do. So you can see most of the people, they are doing what they are doing to show Mayweather here in Mabuku we have talent.
The 46-year-old American former boxer thrilled the crowd with a public workout which included punching and jumping rope. He also watched 3 matches from Zimbabwe's budding boxers. Some young people attending the rally pledged to vote for 80-year-old Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is seeking a second term in the August 23rd poll.
I'm registered to vote. I'm going to vote for our president, Emmerson Mnangagwa.
The election takes place amid a raging economic crisis with high inflation and a currency that plunged more than 50% last month against the US dollar.
We're now in Sudan, where the International Criminal Court has launched an investigation into a surge of hostilities in the Darfur region since mid-April, including reports of killings, rapes, arson, displacement, and crimes affecting children. The regular army and paramilitary rapid support forces, RSF, have been battling in the capital Khartoum and other areas of Sudan in a power struggle that exploded on April the 15th. More than 3 million people have been uprooted, including more than 700,000 who have fled into neighboring countries. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said last week that Sudan, Africa's third largest country by land area, was on the brink of a full-scale civil war that could destabilize the wider region.
The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights released a report which detailed allegations concerning the killing of 87 ethnic Masalit, allegedly by the RSF and members of their allied militia in West Darfur. We are investigating those allegations. We are, by any analysis, not on the precipice of a human catastrophe, but in the very midst of one. It is occurring. And it's my analysis and my prayer and advice that we must act urgently, collectively, to protect the most vulnerable. If this oft-repeated phrase of never again is to mean anything, it must mean something here and now for the people of Darfur that have lived.
Meanwhile, Egypt has launched a ministerial mechanism to communicate with Sudanese warring parties in an attempt to find a resolution to the prolonged conflict. During a regional summit in Cairo, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said in his words, "We express our deepest concern about the continuation of military operations and the severe deterioration in the security and humanitarian situation in Sudan. We urge the warring parties to stop the escalation, commit to immediate and sustainable ceasefire, end the war and prevent the bloodshed of innocent civilians of Sudanese people." The Egyptian president adds that a ministerial mechanism to monitor the Sudanese crisis on the level of ministers of foreign affairs in neighboring countries will have its first meeting in Chad. Back here in Nigeria, like a ticking clock, the journey of 3 years as the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos has come to an end for Ben Llewellyn-Jones. The British Deputy High Commission hosted a farewell dinner in his honour at the Deputy High Commission residence in Ikoyi, Lagos. Having spent a total of 6 years in Nigeria, Mr. Llewellyn-Jones says his experience and time working in Lagos is one that will never be forgotten in his career history.
It's an evening of cheers and hugs as the British Deputy High Commissioner Ben Llewellyn-Jones is hosted to a farewell reception for a job well done over the last 3 years. Speaking to reporters before the ceremony, the outgoing British Deputy High Commissioner commented on diverse topics ranging from the UK-Nigeria relationship, trade, investment to foreign policy, amongst others.
I think it's incredibly strong, and I'm always struck by how often I come across links that even I'm not aware of. People-to-people links, music, culture, sport, and if you add to that the incredible trade, investment, and also government-to-government dialogue we have in respect of development and foreign policy, I think it's a very, very strong, very vibrant, very current relationship. So I'm sure it will go from strength to strength, but it's been an incredibly strong relationship in the time that I've been here.
Addressing the role the UK played in the just concluded 2023 general elections, he has this to say.
The UK tries to be a candid friend and partner to Nigeria, trying to encourage what is, I think, a democratic process since 1999. And so, for our part, trying to support civil society, support the electoral process, and to try and ensure it's as open a process as possible. So I think that's what we did, that's what we intended to do. And of course now we're waiting for some tribunals to give their results, and we'll see what they do. But the important thing, I think, is that for Nigerians who voted to vote again in 2027.
The dinner reception begins a while later with farewell messages from colleagues, partners, friends, and even loved ones.
For me personally, working with Ben for the last year has been truly one of the most challenging but satisfying and happiest years of my working life. Thank you for the multiplicity of ways in which you've added value and made such a positive impact here in Nigeria. You'll be greatly missed.
Wife of the outgoing British Deputy High Commissioner Laura Llewellyn-Jones wears a bright smile as she reflects on her journey in Nigeria.
We've really enjoyed our 6 years here, 3 years in Lagos and 3 years in Abuja. We've had fun, we've got lots of Nigerian friends, friends for life that I'm sure we'll see, and our children as well. I've got lots of friends from school, and so I know we're going to have a lot of Nigerian links coming into the future.
On the sideline of the occasion, African affairs analyst Oluseyi Adeyemo praised the relations Nigeria shares with the UK in terms of security and trade.
I believe that as regards security, the UK has been very supportive of Nigeria in terms of providing intelligence, in terms of providing technical support, and in terms of trade as well. They understand that we're a very, very beautiful bride, and the whole world is chasing after us.
For Metropolitan Senior Pastor Mr. Paul Adefarasin, Mr. Llewellyn-Jones came leading and learning.
My dear friend, Ben, phenomenon, forthright, listening ear, engaged with our community in all its sectors, and made genuine friendships. Britain should be very proud. King Charles III should be very proud of the work he's done here, and he's left a good platform for his successors, and more kudos to him. And because he's a developmentalist, Whitehall will possibly profit from him immensely, and he's helped us to lay some important foundations in his time and build on the foundations of some of his predecessors. A phenomenon. We like that kind of Consular General.
As the British Deputy High Commission in Lagos looks forward to welcoming another Deputy High Commissioner, it is clear that Ben Llewellyn-Jones would be greatly missed.
Indeed, he will. And finally on the programme, many artists find different things for use. It's the same for Swiss artist known as Sepe, who is using a mountain slopes in the Swiss village of Villars-sur-Lot to paint. His latest work is 2 great frescoes of children sketching to depict how they see the vast world around them. The frescoes, which are painted directly on the grass with chalk and charcoal, can last days depending on weather conditions. The Swiss-French artist said his frescoes, which at around 3,000 square meters can be seen from the mountaintop and nearby pastures, symbolize the need to reject uniformity and embrace different perspectives. Sepe is mostly known for his Beyond War series, in which he has spray paint giant hands clasping each other on the ground in different cities around the world, including Berlin, Paris, Istanbul, and Cape Town. It's just picturesque. Well, that's the world today. Many thanks for watching. I'm Lisa Walker. Bye for now.